Home plate. Dennis's story, he is 32. I've come a long way in overcoming my fears from that first moment of Luke's diagnosis, when I thought he would never be able to fully participate in organized sports and feel a part of a team. When I thought he would not ever speak. While he is still not mindful of his own space, he is able to understand direction from his coach, and he is able to communicate. The predictions of the doctors at Riley were dire. He had a 4 in 7 chance of having a mental retardation. He likely wouldn't speak beyond the point at which he was at the time, which was not at all. I wanted to jump across the table to shake the doctor, to tell him he was wrong. My son can't be autistic. How will he ever be able to play t-ball or run track or do an activity where he must take direction and communicate? I refused to believe the doctor. After all, I was at Riley in the first place only because my father urged me to have my son tested for his lack of speech. Prior to Luke's birth, my father, a state representative, was a member of the State House Autism Committee. He was knowledgeable about the symptoms and what to look for. He didn't come right out and say to me, "Son, I believe Luke is autistic." Instead, because Luke was completely nonverbal at the time, Dad urged us to have his speech tested. We called Riley to get an appointment for testing, and it was set up for 6 months from the day of our call. 6 months. We couldn't believe it, but luckily Dad pulled some strings and got us in within 2 weeks. Without his intercession, we would have lost an entire 6 months of therapy. At the first diagnostic appointment, the doctor asked us the question, "What do you think Luke should be doing at this stage in his life?" When we stated what we believed he had accomplished, the doctor assured us that Luke was not exhibiting behaviors of a typical 3-year-old. We left that appointment and cried. I cried tears of anger, of frustration. However, I decided that we were fortunate. We had a diagnosis, one that wasn't as dire as I first thought it could be. My son wasn't wearing braces, he wasn't going to be a teenager wearing diapers. We had a label we could work with. That label, however, could be a double-edged sword. Yes, he was now labeled as autistic, but that label could work to his advantage by offering him help as needed. I used to stress about thinking of what would happen to Luke if something happened to my wife Becca or me. I still stress on occasion, but I now firmly believe he will be fine. He will have enough resources and enough help to see him through any situation. Another issue Luke has to overcome is that he is just too darn cute. Because he is so cute, people have a tendency to help him, which quite quickly turns into enabling him. They often won't let him do him for himself. He isn't allowed to work through his quirks without others coming to his aid. This can be a hindrance to the progression. Even though he is quirky, Luke is wicked smart. He can talk to you about any type of shark that exists, and ask him about any dinosaur and he can talk about them in detail. If he is interested in a subject, he embraces it wholeheartedly. When he began kindergarten, I had many fears for him. Would he make friends? Would he be able to play with other children? Would he be picked on? Would he even know if he was being picked on? The list of fears I had for him goes on and on. The second day of school, I left work early so I could stop in at the school to see how he was doing. As soon as his teacher saw me, she said, "He's going to be just fine." I immediately burst into tears. Many of those fears that were on my list have now been deleted. Last summer, we had a defining moment in his progress, or maybe I should say my progress. While participating on the t-ball team, Luke, the son who I feared would never play a sport, hit the ball and ran the bases. As he crossed home plate, he looked up at us in the stands and gave us a thumbs up. I knew right then and there that while we might not always experience positives, that at that particular moment in time, Luke was experiencing a feeling of happiness and of gratitude and a sense of belonging. And so was I. My son will be just fine.